My mother was a Cleveland public school teacher. She gave me the most important piece of advice that I've ever received in my life. And that's when I was learning to read. She said, "Peter, read with expression."
Welcome to the Fathering Strong podcast. Each week, we have an interesting conversation with dads, fatherhood practitioners, and experts on matters of importance to men and fathers. Thanks for joining us. With today's episode, here's your Fathering Strong podcast host, Eli Williams.
Welcome, everybody, to the Fathering Strong podcast. I am Eli Williams. You know me. I'm a husband, a father, a grandfather. I'm the author of the book, Father Love. I help to pastor New Hope Church here in Springfield, Ohio. And I'm the CEO and president of Urban Light Ministries, which is the nonprofit that powers Fathering Strong. We are so delighted today to have Peter Lawson Jones as our guest on this episode of the Fathering Strong podcast. He's an attorney, a business consultant, professional actor, master of ceremonies, dramatist. He has appeared in well over 20 films, including the Tom Hanks film, A Man Called Otto. Love that film. As a former elected official, Jones made a powerful impact on fatherhood in the great state of Ohio. So much to talk about. Welcome, Peter.
Pastor, thank you for inviting me to appear on your show. And Bruce, great meeting you this afternoon as well.
All right. Well, hard to know where to start. So I'm going to do what I usually do, and that is start with your youth. So let me ask you what life was like for you growing up.
Well, let me say this. My youth was so long ago at this point. Let me try to recollect as best I can. Let me say that the first blessing I received was to have the parents that I had, Charles Whitman Jones and Margaret Diane Jones. To this day, they're now of a blessed memory, but they continue to be my primary hero and shero. So I was very fortunate in that respect that I didn't have to pick up a newspaper, read a book, or look on TV or listen to the radio to find great role models. I had them right in my home. Just very quickly, my mother was a Cleveland public school teacher. She put in about 40 years all totaled in the Cleveland public school system. And if she had been born 20 years later, I think she would have been a movie star because she had the beauty and the charisma that movie stars have. She gave me the most important piece of advice that I've ever received in my life. And that's when I was learning to read. She said, "Peter, read with expression." And that has helped me in my career as an attorney, especially in the courtroom. It certainly helped me as an elected official. I served in elective office for 22 years, first as a councilman in Shaker Heights and vice mayor in Shaker Heights, then as a state representative, and finally as a Cuyahoga County commissioner. And that kind of advice certainly helped me project and tell a story when I was an elected official, the kind of compelling story that enabled me to be successful in a few elections. And then certainly the ability to read with expression. You can't read with expression unless you understand what you're reading and can then convey what you've just read and absorbed to somebody else. Certainly has helped me in my career, my late career as a performer, as an actor. My dad was had 13 letters in high school, 4 different sports, was a conference hurdles champion at Ohio University back in the late 30s and early 40s when African-American students couldn't even stay on campus. And if it weren't for a group of Methodist students who had a co-op and invited my dad and another black student to live in the co-op with them, that's Christianity in practice.
Yes.
I don't know what Dad would have done in the way of lodging. I should point out parenthetically, my mom was amongst the first group of African-American women to stay on campus at Michigan State University. But my dad played in the Negro baseball leagues with the Newark Eagles one summer. He was a Tuskegee Airman. He was a chemist initially by profession and ultimately a college educator and administrator. So I just had tremendous role models. I had a wonderful childhood. I would say I'm an only child, Yeah, I would have liked to have had an older brother, so that would have been great to have a sibling. But other than that, my parents did a good job of not spoiling me. Oh, I had what I needed in terms of material items and that, but they never overindulged me. And as a consequence, I'm not a materialistic person. I don't, gauge my success by my size of the bank account or the length of the car or or how new the model of the car is. So Dad, of course, introduced me to sports. There was a quiet emphasis on educational achievement. I don't necessarily remember them saying, Peter, you've got to get great grades, you got to get A's. I don't remember them saying that, but they had a certain list of expectations that were conveyed to me without words by their actions. And so they kind of set the template for me and provided me with a blueprint for academic success in high school and then at Harvard, where I worked hard enough to graduate magna cum laude in government and then at Harvard Law School. So my parents, I always say this, when it comes to my folks, anything good I've done in life, I owe it to them. Anything bad, I figured that out all by myself.
Yeah, it's very cool. So I usually ask the question this way. Everybody has a fatherhood story. Some are good, some are bad, and some are really ugly. Sounds like you have a pretty good fatherhood story when it comes to your relationship with your father.
Oh, there's absolutely no question about that. I mean, of all the things I've done in life, I think one of the things I've been most effective as, and I know this from my feedback, what my kids have said to me, my 3 children, Ryan, he and his wife just had our first grandchild, provided my wife and I with our first grandchild.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you, young 4-day-old Jordan Peter Jones. And I have a daughter, Leah, who's very successful, lives in LA, and a younger son who just graduated from Ohio State, all 3 of them through college. Leah with 2 grad degrees, an MBA from Wharton and a master's in city planning from the Penn School of Design. And I think if I've done anything well in life, I've been a good, along with my wife, we've been good parents, very, very good parents. And where did I acquire my parenting skills? From watching my dad, from watching my mom. So there's there is absolutely nothing negative I can say about my parents. And if you want to get me up into a fighting lather, try to say something bad about the 2 of them or my 3 kids or my wife, and then I'll be ready to go. I'll be ready to bring it.
Well, they certainly left a great legacy when it comes to their son. So congratulations on all of your accomplishments. We could spend all day in talking about your various exploits. I think you are the definition of a Renaissance man.
Well, that's kind of you. I know all the things that I can't do well, so I never view myself that way.
Well, listen, thanks for sharing about your children. I was going to ask you about that. So let me ask you this way.
Sure.
What, as you were raising your children, was the most challenging thing about being a parent?
It's interesting because my oldest son this weekend, while we were in Bloomington, Illinois, where he and his wife reside, asked my wife and I what was the most challenging thing about raising them. Emotionally, the most formidable thing was knowing how to comfort them after they had experienced setbacks. When you see your kids in tears, knowing just what to say to encourage them, but on the other hand, to let them know that this is temporary, that, you're going to gain from this experience, however painful it is, and that better and brighter days are ahead, and that when all is said and done, you'll find a silver lining in this moment. I think that's one of the most challenging things. You worry about adverse peer influence with your kids because you can't be with them 24/7. So you just try to arm them with what they need to make good decisions. So you try to arm them with a good moral and ethical base. You try to help them develop good judgment, ascertainment, so that they can make the right calls when you aren't around behind them.
Yeah.
And boy, I have seen that played out in my kids' lives in so many ways, because I've seen some of their friends wind up in activities or in incidents that, Ryan, Lee, or Evan could have, but for the fact that they said, this isn't for me. And they've got that little light that goes on in the back of their minds that kind of alerts them, kind of danger, avoid this, because of something that some values that we've inculcated within them. So, those are the two major challenges. Also, you want your children to be capable of autonomous, capable of standing on their own, making their own way, having good values, treating people well, understanding that they have an obligation, certainly to themselves and their families, but also to greater society, to do something positive and to be somebody who gives to society and isn't simply a leech or a parasite that feeds on others and feeds on society, but never gives anything back. I mean, there's a whole array of challenges that confront anyone as a parent. And that's why we need two loving, nurturing parents in every child's life, regardless of the circumstances between the father and the mother. You've got to have their involvement of both parents, because kids benefit from that. Your daughters learn what they want or don't want in a man from watching their dads, and the sons learn similarly in terms of watching their moms. So,
yeah, no doubt about that. That's so well said. So, what then has given you the most joy as a parent?
Let me count the ways, huh?
Pick one, right?
Let me say this, most relationships require some degree of reciprocity. But I found with my parents and my three kids in particular, that bond that's established from the outset, I had the good fortune of cutting all three of their umbilical cords. And from that moment on, there's been nothing but joy. Certainly, I've reveled in their successes, their graduations from college and grad school, their launching into their careers. But there's small moments. I could think of the trips where it was just Ryan and me, or just Leah and me, or Evan and me, and the joyous experience and times that we shared together, bonding, becoming even closer as parent and child. So there's just abundance. If I had a full head of hair, I wouldn't have much gray hair, because my kids haven't done much to give me any. So there's just been a panoply, an infinite number of just great moments in which I took pride in them, but just knowing that connection that exists. I can think about when, and I've had similar experiences with all three, but the one that comes to mind the quickest, because Ryan is the oldest, my wife encouraged us to join Jack and Jill, which is kind of an association of professionals and their kids, and they have chapters throughout the country. And I was a little bit reluctant at first, because I thought, that seems a little bit bourgeois. And I might be middle class, but I'm not bourgeois. But I found out it was a great experience, but one for the kids and for all the parents who were involved. But I can remember they had one event, and at that event, the fathers offered tributes to their sons, and the sons offered tributes to their dads. And I remember, specifically Ryan saying, when I grow up, I want to be the kind of father that my dad is. I've seen how he is, not just with me, but with my brother and with my sister. I want to emulate that. He spoke about times when I was in the legislature at the time, and he played varsity baseball and basketball in high school, and he would have games, and he would say, "Dad, don't bother to come. It's too far away. You have to drive too far." And he said, but Dad would always still be there. And that kind of tribute really stands out to me as one of those unforgettable moments of connection and knowing that I had a positive impact. And that's why I don't worry about Ryan and his wife, because she has a great set of parents herself. We're blessed with wonderful in-laws. I don't worry about them raising this 4-day-old baby, because they've had great examples going back generations, not just with my wife and me, but with their grandparents. And to get affirmation of that as I received that particular afternoon from my son was absolutely memorable and beyond touching. I'm sure I cried because he said, Dad, he was saying, Dad, you've done a great job.
Wow. No greater compliment for a
there
father
is no
than to hear
better.
that. Yeah.
No better.
Well, listen, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, I would like to ask you about your stint as a legislator in Ohio and what led you to be a part of the creation of what became the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood. That's something that many states, I don't think any other state actually has something like the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood. So Ohio is a leader, and it's thanks largely to you and your work. So let's talk about that when we come back after this break. This is the Fathering Strong podcast. My guest today is Peter Lawson Jones. We'll be back right after this.
A recent survey of the greatest needs of fathers determined that many of them want to learn how to be the best dads they can be. This includes seeking advice on fatherhood, parenting skills, and understanding their role in a child's life. We're happy to announce the new Fathering Strong book and suite of resources that includes a workbook, 30-day devotional and journal, and workshop materials. Written by Fathering Strong's Bruce Stapleton, this package provides everything you need for your personal growth as the spiritual leader of your home. Get more information at thefatheringstrongbook.com. Purchase the materials wherever books are sold.
Welcome back. My guest today is Peter Lawson Jones. He is quite amazing as an individual. You can check his bio out. I didn't make it to the bio. I just went to your homepage and looked at the brief description that's there about your life. And I'm telling you, I was just blown away with the many things that you've done. Peter Lawson Jones, my guest today on the Fathering Strong podcast. And I want to ask you how you got involved with what became a legislative move to help enshrine into law the Ohio Fatherhood Commission. And for those of you who've never heard of such a thing, it is responsible for much of the funding that Urban Life Ministries has received over the years, not currently, but over the years. And by the way, that's going to come back. But Ohio Commission on Fatherhood has been such a blessing to the fathers in our state because of the funding and the guidance and all that has been provided to fatherhood practitioners and agencies in the community, in communities throughout the state that work to help fathers become the best parenting partners that they can be. So thank you for that. How did that happen? Just lay that out for us.
Well, it's funny. It was a happy accident, actually. I was in, I believe, my first term in the Ohio House of Representatives. And for whatever reason, a local organization in Northeast Ohio that was kind of a think tank on social service and social and societal issues. Would have an annual conference that was it's symposium that was always well attended by elected officials and practitioners in the various social sciences and academics. And they asked me to talk about I was invited to address one of the workshops to talk about what the state of Ohio was doing to assist low-income fathers in securing job training and employment, or helping low-income fathers in any other regard. So I talked with my legislative aide, and we did some research, and I found that the state of Ohio was essentially doing absolutely nothing in that regard. And so I said to myself, well, I can't go to this workshop and say, well, state of Ohio is doing nothing. Enjoy the rest of this hour. So we researched what other states were doing. And there actually were fatherhood commissions and initiatives in a handful of other states. So when I went to speak at the workshop, I said, first, the state of Ohio is doing nothing. Other states are doing this array of activities and programming. And so when I go back to Columbus next week, I'm going to work on drafting a bill to establish an Ohio Commission on Fatherhood. And that's really that was the initial seeds. That's how it came about. Because of this invitation that had been extended to me to speak on what the state of Ohio was doing, when in fact it was doing nothing in that respect, that regard. So I had the legislation drafted. I can't remember, it might have been the Health and Human Services Committee, but I was invited to give sponsored testimony, and I started it in a rather unusual way. I started it by singing. And what I sang was, sometimes I feel like a fatherless child. And that certainly got everybody's attention, to say the least. I could carry a bit of a tune. I got a real funny story about that for the next time we talk. But, and so, there were some sources of funding that I kind of had identified, and I wanted to see an Ohio Commission on Fatherhood seed programs throughout the state that would help fathers secure employment, low-income, non-custodial fathers secure employment, develop skills. I wanted to see programs that would help connect fathers and reconcile them with their families, with their children, programs for fathers to work with young infants. There were just so many things that were being done elsewhere, and some other things that I thought about that needed to be an annual or at least a biennial celebration of fatherhood and fatherhood summit. So all of this was in the bill. So it didn't go anywhere during my first term in office. My second term, I come back, I offer the legislation again, and again, another wonderful coincidence. The governor, and I developed a very good relationship with him, Bob Taft. Now, Governor Taft was Republican, I'm a Democrat, but he had, in his biennial budget, wanted to set aside some funds, some federal funds from TANF, Temporary Assistance to Needy Families funding, that would be directed to fathers to help them develop work skills, employment skills, and secure jobs. And so I had conversations with the governor's office and with the Republican leadership, and we were able to fold via an amendment the concept of to create the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood into the budget bill. And that's how it passed. And I can remember our first meeting, the governor was there. There was a bit of pomp and circumstance. And I think this must have been back in 1993 probably fall, late winter 1999. That's the first meeting of the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood. And here, a quarter century later, and I hope there's a celebration sometime this year, a quarter century later, it's still alive, kicking, and making a difference in families' lives throughout the state of Ohio. Then when I became a Cuyahoga County Commissioner, a friend of mine, Cleveland Councilman Kevin Conwell, who's active in fatherhood programming here in the city of Cleveland, said, "Hey, Peter, why don't you do at the county level what you did at the state level?" So I went ahead and founded the Cuyahoga County Fatherhood Initiative, which has a spectrum of programs to assist fathers in becoming involved, engaged, and supportive of their children and of their families.
Yes, and that is something that I believe every community needs. There have been some county mobilization efforts that Ohio Commission on Fatherhood has been putting forth and supporting over the years. In my county, I helped to lead an effort to mobilize our county. The challenge for smaller communities is that there has not so far been very many, if any, that have been able to become sustainable with funding that survives through the different changes in the local elected officials and the coming and going of department leaders, social services agencies and what have you. It's difficult for many communities to organize themselves in such a way to create what Cuyahoga County has, and that's a shame.
Well,
And
you need a leader.
no doubt.
There needs to be a leader in the public sector, number one, who makes sure that funds are set aside. I think when you and I were at the conference, OPNFF in Zanesville just a couple of weeks ago, we talked about this very issue and the fact that there needs to be somebody who connects the dots, who says, you want families to prosper, you want children to prosper, then you've got to make sure that two parents are supported in a way so that they can do what's necessary to maximize the opportunities for their children. And there has to also be that understanding that if you're really serious about attacking the myriad of social problems that exist, the best way to do it is through strong families and healthy mentally, emotionally, and physically children. And you do that by supporting parents and this is an effort that involves the public sector, the private sector, the faith-based community, the charitable community, but you need leaders in every community who can mobilize people and mobilize the resources necessary to get this done. This is not a partisan issue. That's why Governor Taft and I were able to work together to ensure the founding of the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood. This is not an issue that just benefits men. Women benefit when they've got a strong partner involved and engaged in raising their children. So there really should be no opposition to this. And this is, how the kids say when you figure something out and it was really that simple, they say, duh. Well, this is a duh because it's so clear that these kind of programs have the kind of return on investment that can make such a difference in the quality of life for our families in every community throughout the state of Ohio and throughout this nation. But you have to have a champion.
No doubt.
So we need a champion in your community, but
we need to get
more of you, just like there needs to be more of me here in Northeast Ohio.
So we need to get you back into the legislature in Ohio so that you can work on so that or somebody who could lead an effort to get this codified in the law on the county level, complete with funding so that said leadership can be taken care of to ensure we've got somebody in every county who is keeping fatherhood on the front burner. But
Absolutely.
that's enough. That's enough about that.
All 88 counties need to have that kind of individual.
Yes, absolutely right. All right, so I'm going to write your name in for for governor. Hey, thank you so much. There's so much we could talk about. I want to ask you about
Sure.
your acting career. Now, how did that come about?
When I was 10 years old, if you asked me what I wanted to do in life, I would have told you that I want to become a professional baseball player. I want to become an actor, and I want to get involved in politics. And I knew this at the age of 10 because those kinds of things, when I was, when I saw a movie or I watched a game or or playing a game or you picked up the newspaper, those were the kinds of things that fascinated me: politics, acting, sports. And I just kind of inherently knew that. Now, I didn't really act on it until college when my college roommate, who's truly a Renaissance figure and a wonderful peer influence, he was in a play and he asked me if I was doing anything that afternoon. It was a Sunday afternoon. He said, "You doing anything this evening?" I said, "No." He said, "Why don't you come to my rehearsal?" So I said, "Sure." I went, didn't have anything on the itinerary. So I went, and they hadn't cast all the roles. So I told the director, I said, "Hey, I'll read some of these roles just so you can get through, make it easier for you to get through the rehearsal." And after the rehearsal was over, he said, "Hey, would you like to play those roles?" And I said, "Sure, okay." That's how I started acting. And I acted in college and law school. And my roommate also was a wonderful visual artist and also wrote poetry. And I looked at him and said, "Man, I'd like to do something creative." So and that was what inspired me to write my first play, was seeing watching him in his creative process. So then I didn't act again after college and law school. And I went on the board at Karamu House, which is like the oldest multicultural theater in the United States. And they had a stage reading festival. And so I asked the executive director if she would mind putting the play that I had written into the festival. And she said, "Sure." And it got a good response, and they gave it a full production the following year. And I used to come to watch that production every night. The three plays I've written, I like to say, are like my fourth, fifth, and sixth children. And so I would go and watch this play every performance for the 2-week run. And I became friends with the artistic director at Karamu at the time. And when he found out that I used to act and knew something about theater and something about Black theater, he asked me if I'd like to be in a stage reading. I said, "Sure," because stage readings aren't terribly hard. You don't have to memorize lines. You don't have weeks of rehearsal. There aren't costuming. It's a pretty easy thing to do. And then after I did that, he asked me if I'd like to be in a second stage reading. And at that time, I said, "Wow, this is fun. I kind of like to do some acting again." So I auditioned, got cast in play. And initially, my only interest was I thought I'd do a little theater and maybe some voiceover work. But one thing led to another, and I started networking. And the first major national project I got cast in was a ABC crime drama called Detroit 187. And I got cast in that. And then I got cast in a film, Alex Cross, and then film White Boy Rick, and then Chicago Fire and A Man Called Otto. So, I started getting agents across the country to represent me. And, I just kind of attacked it the way I'd attack anything else once I decided that I want to see how far this can go. And so, and it's kind of ironic because I just got inducted into the Karamu Hall of Fame, which was actually a kind of institution that I had started when I was on the board at Karamu, because there were so many great people who've come through Karamu. James Pickens of Grey's Anatomy, Robert Guillaume came through Karamu. Esapatha Murkerson, who was on Law and Order, is on Chicago Med. Langston Hughes used to live at Karamu. He actually had his own residence there on the second floor. So a lot of really gifted, Bill Cobb, who recently passed. If anybody, our generation remembers Superfly.
Yeah.
Ron O'Neal, who played Superfly, a Karamu alum. So it all started for me at Karamu. And again, there's always kind of a little bit of serendipity, and then it kind of opens your eyes to a new possibility, and you say, hey, let me grab this ball and see how far I can run with it.
That's fascinating.
I mean, but when I was 10 years old, I knew I wanted to do those three things, and I was able to do 2 out of 3, not bad. And then even when I was like 14, even though I don't know if I knew a lawyer at that time, I knew I was going to go to law school. And, and my parents, again, imbued me with the kind of faith in myself that if I worked hard and treated people well, that, my horizons were going to be unlimited. This is something, again, they conveyed quietly, covertly, without words. It was the environment that they created. And this is the obligation that every one of us has as fathers and as parents, is to create that kind of milieu where kids just feel that they can achieve anything.
Hear, hear. We're going to take our final time out, and when we come back, I'd like to give you some space to give some encouraging words to a dad who may be watching this podcast, and he's having a struggle, as many of us have, especially in our younger years as parents. What encouragement would you have for him? This is the Fathering Strong podcast. I'm Eli Williams, and my guest today is Peter Lawson Jones. More with him after this timeout.
Fathering Strong informs, engages, and empowers dads to be their best as fathers. Visit our website, fatheringstrong.com, for a wealth of resources, including informative videos, articles, books, devotionals, courses, research, and more. The Fathering Strong mobile app is a platform that empowers dads to connect with each other for mutual encouragement and support. Download it for free at fatheringstrong.com. And now, back to our conversation on the Fathering Strong podcast.
My guest today is Peter Lawson Jones on the Fathering Strong podcast, and we're having a good time, even on the breaks, folks. You were telling a story about a cat. Go ahead and finish that.
Well, I say we have had, my wife grew up around cats, and so since we were married, we've always had one cat, and the kids have always enjoyed having a cat around. So the other 2 weeks ago, we heard some meowing outside of the house, and we were fearful that it was our cat. And we go outside and look, and there's this little cute black cat with white piping and white stripes that's somehow underneath my car and then climbs into the underbody of the car. And we're finally able to lure the cat out with some treats. And we grabbed her, or him or her, we don't even know what the gender is. And so if you have heard any kind of noise, we kept the cat in the den because the other cat is not, let's say, loving this new intrusion, this new addition. So until we properly introduce them, this kitten is frolicking in my den right now. So if you hear anything, if you hear any noise, it's just the kitten, not the boys.
We haven't heard a thing. I would certainly understand that if we did. Listen, I wanted to ask you what you would say in the way of encouragement to a young father who has been listening to you and has felt inspired by your fatherhood story, both growing up and your own story as a father. What would you say to a dad who's struggling right now and just needs some encouragement?
The first thing I would do is offer some words of comfort that being a parent does involve struggle and challenge. So you aren't alone in that respect. And whenever you have questions, reach out to somebody who you know has had this experience, has gone through, gotten to the other side, they've got great kids, and just network with them and draw from them some of their wisdom and their
Sure.
thoughts and how they operated in a way and how they got over, as we would say in church,
Yeah.
how I got over.
Yeah.
Because on the other side of the struggle is extraordinary reward. As I said earlier, there is, I've had a great life. So many of the dreams I've had, I've been able to accomplish, whether it was in the political realm or now in the acting realm or as a lawyer. I've had a great life, and certainly, but family has been the best. And what you want, what's more important than anything, is to reach that point where your child feels about you the way I do about my dad and about my mom, or the way my kids feel about my wife, Lisa, and me. That's the reward. And there is no better reward. There isn't. There is no amount of money that's better than that. There is no house that's more grand than that. There is no professional accomplishment that means more than that. When you hear your kids say, I want to be like you, you're my role model, you're my hero. And if you just stick with it, and yes, kids try your patience, just like you tried your parents' patience. So understand that. But you can get through it because generations upon generations have gotten through it. And even if your relationship with your your child's mother is frayed or maybe is non-existent, you can't use that as an excuse not to be involved in your child's life, because you don't want to reach my age, and I'll be 72 in December. You don't want to reach my age and look back, and the only thing your kids care about is when you pass on and what they're going to get out of the will. You want them to want to be around you. You want them to, my son has followed a family tradition that he would not have followed if he and I weren't close. And that is giving as the middle name to his son, his firstborn, my first name. That's become a little family tradition with us. And I cried when I walked into that hospital room, because we didn't know the gender of the child. We didn't know what the child looked like. We knew that they had picked out names if it was a boy, if it was a girl. But when I walked in and they say, we want to present to you your grandson, and his name is, and we're following the tradition you have in your family. His name is Jordan Peter Jones. It doesn't get better than that.
Yeah.
Winning the Super Bowl is not better than that. Winning the World Series, slam dunking on LeBron James, not better than this.
Well, listen, Dr. Peter, we really do appreciate you being with us today. It has been delightful. I've learned so much, and I'm sure that our audience has also been blessed by your words of wisdom. We appreciate it so much.
Well, Pastor,
that's going to wrap up.
Pastor,
I'm sorry,
Pastor, if you ever need me to journey, to meet with you and to talk with some of the young men who are benefiting from your program, all it is a phone call. And I feel so fortunate that I was in Zanesville and have a new friend and a new colleague, and somebody out on the fatherhood battlefield in you. So this has been a blessing to me as well. I really am grateful that you invited me to be on your show. And I hope together we have changed some lives and we have inspired some young men to just be the best dads that they can be, because all they put in it, they'll get back. Cast your bread upon the water, it'll come back manyfold.
No doubt about that. Amen.
All right.
Thank you so much. That wraps up today's podcast episode. Father Strong is offering a lot of information and resources that are available on our website, Go to fatheringstrong.com, learn about those. And of course, the Fathering Strong app where dads can connect, they can empower, and they can engage with one another. It's brand new. It's on the cutting edge, and we want to encourage you, if you're listening today, if you've been watching this, to go ahead and go to fatheringstrong.com, download the app, and join the fatherhood community. Thank you, Peter, for being our guest today on the Fathering Strong podcast. We appreciate it. And I want to close with this thought. Life as a husband and as a father can be very, very challenging, as we've talked about today. Some days are more difficult than others. But my encouragement to you, my friend, is to seek the designer of family, the Heavenly Father who instituted the relationship between a husband and a wife to raise children up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Always consult him, because as scripture says in Psalm 127:1, unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. So trust him in all things, parenting and husbanding. May the Lord bless you as you give your child what no one else on earth can, and that is your fully developed father love. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Fathering Strong podcast. We hope you enjoyed it, were inspired, challenged, and encouraged. By subscribing, you won't miss an episode as you'll receive notifications of each new posting. Go to the Fathering Strong YouTube channel to subscribe. For an informative weekly read, sign up for the Fathering Strong blog posts. Find them at urbanlight.org. Fathering Strong is powered by Urban Light Ministries, a nonprofit Christian organization that has been serving families for nearly 30 years. Charitable gifts by people like you enable us to offer resources free of charge. Go to www.urbanlight.org to give. Thank you. Join us for the next installment of the Fathering Strong podcast.